The small exam room smelled like rubbing alcohol and clean paper. Dr. Miller carefully put his stethoscope back around his neck. He clicked off his pen light, placing it neatly in its tray. "All right, Sarah," he said with a kind smile, "everything looks just fine. You're growing up healthy and strong." He folded his hands on the desk, looking at the young woman sitting on the edge of the exam table. She had been coming to him for many years, ever since she was a little girl. These yearly checkups were very routine, like reading a familiar book. He flipped through her chart one last time, making a quick note with his pen. The sun shone brightly through the window, making warm stripes on the floor. It was a Tuesday afternoon, quiet in the office, just like most Tuesdays. Dr. Miller had seen many patients already today. Each one had come in, gotten checked, and then left, saying thank you on their way out. He expected this visit to be no different. His mind was already moving to the next patient, or maybe a quick cup of coffee before the afternoon rush. He thought about what he would have for dinner, perhaps some chicken with green beans. "Remember to eat your vegetables and get enough sleep," he advised, just as he always did. Sarah nodded, her long hair falling over her shoulder. She seemed a little quiet today, but that wasn't too unusual for a teenager. He stood up, a clear sign that the checkup was done. He walked over to the door, his hand reaching for the doorknob. He was ready to open it and let her out, then call for the next person waiting. Just a regular day, winding down with no surprises. He felt a sense of calm, knowing he had done his job well. It was just another normal day at the office, or so he thought. Dr. Miller's hand rested on the cool metal doorknob, ready to open it. He glanced back at Sarah, a polite smile on his face, waiting for her to get up and follow him out. The quiet hum of the building's air conditioning filled the space between them. He thought she would simply swing her legs off the table, thank him, and be on her way. It was the usual pattern, a well-known dance of doctor and patient at the end of a visit. Sarah, however, moved a little differently than he expected. She didn't jump down quickly. Instead, she slid off the exam table with a soft swish of the paper cover beneath her. Her feet landed gently on the floor. She didn't look at him right away. Her eyes seemed to be fixed on something distant, perhaps a spot on the wall. Dr. Miller paused, his hand still on the doorknob, a tiny flicker of mild surprise going through him. Was she just lost in thought, as teenagers sometimes are? She took a breath and then started to walk. Her steps were not quick and purposeful like someone ready to leave. They were slow, almost dreamlike. Each foot lifted and placed with a quiet softness, like she was in no hurry at all. She walked past the empty chair, past the small sink, her gaze still not quite meeting his. Her pace made the short distance from the exam table to the door feel much longer. Dr. Miller watched her, his brow furrowing just a little. He wondered if she had a question she forgot to ask. He waited patiently, his hand still on the doorknob, ready for her to reach it. He expected her to turn the handle and step out into the hallway, just like always. Sarah finally reached the door, her slow steps bringing her right up to where Dr. Miller stood, his hand still resting on the cool metal. He expected her to gently push the door open, to step out into the hallway and walk towards the front desk. He even started to move his hand away, making space for her to exit. But Sarah didn't reach for the doorknob at all. Instead, her hand went to the edge of the door, not to open it wider, but to pull it towards her. Dr. Miller watched, a little puzzled, as she grasped the edge and, with a soft click, pulled the heavy door shut. The sound was not loud or forceful, but a quiet, firm thud that seemed to swallow all the gentle sounds of the clinic. The air conditioning's hum suddenly felt much louder in the now sealed room. Dr. Miller blinked. His polite smile slowly faded. His hand, which had been ready to open the door, now hung awkwardly in the air. He looked at Sarah, then at the closed door, and then back at Sarah. This was not what happened at the end of a checkup. Patients always left. The door always opened. Never before had someone closed it from the inside, especially not after being told everything was fine. A tiny shiver went down his back. The quiet in the room suddenly felt different, heavier. It was no longer the peaceful quiet of a calm afternoon, it was a quiet full of unspoken questions. He waited, his eyes fixed on Sarah, trying to understand this very strange moment. Why would she do that? What was happening? The calm feeling he had just a moment ago was now completely gone. The soft click of the door closing echoed in the sudden quiet. Dr. Miller stood frozen, his hand still hovering where the doorknob should have been. His eyes, wide with a mix of confusion and alarm, were fixed on the closed door. He could feel his heart beginning to beat a little faster. He looked at Sarah, expecting to see a mistake, a shy apology, or maybe even a silly joke. But what he saw instead made his confusion deepen. Sarah slowly turned away from the door. Her movement was smooth, like a dancer. As she faced him, the afternoon sunlight from the window caught her face. A small, knowing smile played on her lips. It wasn't a wide, happy grin, but a subtle curve that held a secret. Her eyes, usually soft and a bit shy during her checkups, now sparkled with a hint of mischief. It was a look that said, "I know something you don't know." Dr. Miller felt a strange chill. This was not the quiet, polite Sarah he had known for years. This was someone new, someone with a surprising confidence. The smile on her face seemed to tell him that closing the door was not an accident at all. It was on purpose. It was part of a plan. He swallowed, his throat suddenly dry. He tried to think of what to say, but no words came. He just watched her, completely caught off guard. Her smile grew just a tiny bit wider, as if she enjoyed seeing him so confused. The air in the room felt thick with expectation. The silence in the exam room felt heavy, stretching between Dr. Miller and Sarah. His heart thumped a nervous rhythm against his ribs. He waited, his eyes wide, for her to explain why she had closed the door, why she was looking at him with such a strange, knowing smile. He half expected her to laugh, to say it was all a joke. But she didn't laugh. Instead, Sarah took a small step closer, her gaze steady. Her voice, when it came, was not the soft, almost shy voice he usually heard. It was clearer, a little deeper, and full of a new kind of confidence. "Dr. Miller," she began, her voice cutting through the quiet air. She paused for a moment, letting the sound of her own name hang in the air, making sure she had his full attention. He could do nothing but stare back, completely focused on her. Then, with a slow, deliberate tone, she said the words, "I just turned 18 today." Each word was spoken clearly, like a little bell ringing in the quiet room. She didn't rush them, she let them sink in. She watched his face carefully, making sure he understood every single part of what she had just told him. The number 18 seemed to hang in the air, big and important. It wasn't just a number, it felt like a key, unlocking something new and unexpected. Dr. Miller's eyes widened even more. He blinked once, then again, as if the words needed to be replayed in his mind to make sense. 18? Today? He felt a fresh wave of surprise wash over him, pushing away his earlier confusion. The meaning of her words, combined with her actions and that knowing smile, started to form a very different picture in his mind. The room felt even smaller now, and the air even thicker. The words "I just turned 18 today" hung in the air, a bright, clear sound that seemed to hum around Dr. Miller. His face, which had been confused just moments before, now showed pure surprise. His eyes, usually kind and calm, widened so much that the white parts showed all around the dark centers. His mouth opened slightly, but no sound came out. He looked like a statue, completely frozen in place. He blinked once, slowly, as if his mind was trying to catch up with what his ears had just heard. 18. Today. The number spun in his head. This was Sarah, the young girl he had watched grow up, the one whose scraped knees he had bandaged, whose silly drawings once hung on his office wall. Now she was saying she was a grown-up, right here, right now, in this closed room. A wave of strange feelings washed over him. He felt a little lost, a little shocked. His mind raced, trying to find the right words, the right thing to do. Should he wish her happy birthday? That seemed too simple, too normal for this very abnormal moment. Should he ask her why she closed the door? That seemed to ignore her important news. He just stood there, his hands still hanging at his sides, completely unsure. His polite doctor's smile was gone, replaced by a look of stunned bewilderment. The quiet returned, but it was a different kind of quiet now. It was full of the question marks floating above Dr. Miller's head. He looked at Sarah, who was still smiling that knowing smile, patiently waiting for his reaction. He felt like he was in a play and had forgotten his lines. What was the next step? He had no idea. His thoughts were a tangled mess, and his usual calm doctor self was nowhere to be found. Dr. Miller remained frozen, his gaze fixed on Sarah, his mind a whirlwind of confusion. He couldn't speak, couldn't move. He was still trying to process her words, "I just turned 18 today," and the strange, knowing smile that went with them. The silence stretched again, thick with his unasked questions. Then, Sarah moved. She didn't wait for him to say anything. With a light, easy movement that showed her growing confidence, she turned from the closed door. Her eyes still sparkled with that playful, secret look. Then, without a word, she took a quick step back towards the exam table. With a small, graceful hop, she lifted herself back onto it. The paper crinkled softly beneath her. She didn't just sit on the edge this time, ready to leave. Instead, she settled herself comfortably, pulling her legs up slightly so her feet rested on the table's edge. She looked as relaxed as if she were sitting on a couch at home, not in a doctor's office exam room. Her smile never left her face. It was a bold move, one that showed she felt completely in charge of the moment. She watched Dr. Miller, still frozen, her head tilted slightly as if waiting for him to catch up. Dr. Miller watched her every move, completely taken aback. His surprise deepened with each action. First, closing the door. Then, telling him her age with that special smile. And now, getting back onto the exam table as if the visit was just beginning, not ending. It was all so far from what he expected. He felt a new wave of bewilderment. He had no idea what she wanted or why she was doing any of this. The quiet of the room was now full of Sarah's relaxed presence and Dr. Miller's growing alarm. Dr. Miller still stood by the closed door, his mind a jumble of thoughts and worries. Sarah, now settled on the exam table, watched him with that same knowing smile. Her presence filled the small room, making it feel very different from just a few minutes ago. He finally managed to close his mouth, but no words came out. He just stared at her, waiting for some explanation, some reason for all this strange behavior. Sarah seemed to enjoy his surprise. Her smile widened just a little, showing a hint of playfulness. She leaned forward slightly, her eyes twinkling. Her voice, when she spoke again, was light and teasing, like she was sharing a secret. It was a voice that didn't belong in a doctor's office, especially not at the end of a checkup. "Well?" she asked, her voice soft but clear. She paused, letting the question hang in the air, then added, "Don't you want to wish me happy birthday, Dr. Miller?" The words hit him like a small, unexpected wave. Happy birthday? The question was simple, but in this moment, it felt loaded with many other meanings. It wasn't just a polite request, it was an invitation, a challenge, wrapped in a sweet, innocent tone. Dr. Miller felt his face grow warm. His heart, which had just started to slow down, now beat faster again. He knew he should say something, anything. Happy birthday would be the normal response. But nothing about this situation felt normal. He was still the doctor, and she was still his patient, even if she was 18. The rules felt suddenly blurry. He looked at her, truly stunned now, trying to find the right words that would respect her, but also keep things proper. He was completely caught off guard by her bold question. Sarah's playful question, "Don't you want to wish me happy birthday?" hung in the air, a small, light sound that felt heavy with unspoken meaning to Dr. Miller. His mind, which had been simply surprised, now tumbled into a mix of confusion and real worry. He wasn't just a man, he was a doctor. And doctors had very clear rules. He thought about the many lessons he learned in medical school. He remembered the posters on the walls of his office that talked about treating all patients with respect and keeping a proper distance. There were rules about what a doctor could and could not do, what they could and could not say. These rules were there to keep everyone safe and to make sure doctors always did what was best for their patients. But Sarah was no longer just a child patient. She was 18. That was a big number. It meant she was an adult in the eyes of the law. Did that change the rules? Dr. Miller felt a cold knot form in his stomach. He was confused about her actions, closing the door, sitting back on the table, that knowing smile. But he was even more worried about what it all meant for him, as her doctor. He knew he needed to be very careful. One wrong word, one wrong move, and things could go very badly. His job was to heal, to help, to be a trusted caregiver. He couldn't let anything make that unclear. He looked at Sarah, still watching him with bright eyes, and felt the weight of his job, his rules, and his duty pressing down on him. What was the right thing to do in this very strange, very unexpected moment? He wished he had a handbook for this, but there wasn't one. Dr. Miller's mind was still racing, trying to sort through the rules and his growing unease. He knew he had to say something, but before he could even form a polite "happy birthday," Sarah spoke again. She shifted a little on the exam table, her smile softening, but still holding that knowing look. "It's funny," she began, her voice a little softer now, more thoughtful. "Turning 18 actually feels different. Like, really different." She looked past Dr. Miller for a moment, out the window where the sun was still bright. "It's like one day you're a kid, and the next, suddenly, you're not. Everything changes." She brought her gaze back to him, her eyes serious for a moment before the playful spark returned. "You know, when I was a kid, coming here was just part of growing up. Getting shots, listening to my heart, all that stuff." She chuckled lightly. "But now it feels like I can make my own choices. Like I'm in charge of myself." She emphasized the words "my own choices" just a little, letting them hang in the quiet air. Dr. Miller listened, his worry still strong, but a new kind of confusion mixed in. Was she just talking about growing up, or was there more to it? Her words felt like they had a hidden meaning, especially after everything else that had happened. He tried to read her face, to understand what she truly meant. He felt like he was walking on thin ice, unsure of where her words were leading. He swallowed hard, still unsure how to respond to this unexpected conversation. Dr. Miller listened to Sarah talk about turning 18, his worry growing with each word. He knew he needed to gently steer the conversation back to a professional level. He cleared his throat softly, hoping to make a polite interruption. "Sarah," he began, trying to sound calm and kind. He wanted to acknowledge her birthday, but also remind her that their time was up. But before he could finish his thought, Sarah didn't miss a beat. She leaned forward a little more, her eyes still sparkling. "And it's not just about what I can choose, you know," she continued, as if she hadn't heard him at all. Her voice gained a little more energy. "It's about what's possible now. Things that weren't before." She smiled, a little wider this time, and looked directly into his eyes. Dr. Miller tried again, a bit more firmly this time. "Yes, Sarah, I understand that turning 18 is a big step, a new chapter." He trailed off, trying to find the right way to end his sentence and the conversation. He felt like he was constantly trying to catch up, to get a word in edgewise. Again, she simply flowed over his words. "A very big step," she agreed, her voice bright. "And it feels like I'm finally seen as a grown-up, not just a kid. People treat you differently. They look at you differently." She paused, her gaze still fixed on him, as if asking him if he understood, if he was looking at her differently now too. He felt himself getting flustered. Each attempt to speak was met with her continuing, confident chatter. It was like trying to put a small stopper into a flowing stream, the words just went right around it. He took a small step back, feeling the wall behind him. It was becoming very hard to keep his doctor's calm when she wouldn't let him speak. Dr. Miller leaned back against the cool wall, his earlier calm completely gone. He felt a prickle of sweat on his forehead. Sarah's easy chatter, her bright eyes, and that knowing smile now made him feel very uneasy. It wasn't just a simple birthday chat anymore. This whole situation felt wrong, like a puzzle with missing pieces that could lead to big trouble. His mind was no longer just confused, it was worried. He thought about his job, the years he spent helping people, building trust with families like Sarah's. A doctor's office should be a safe and proper place. But right now, with the door closed and Sarah talking about new choices, it didn't feel safe in the right way. He knew that even a small mistake, a wrong look or a poorly chosen word, could be misunderstood. People might get the wrong idea. He swallowed hard, his throat dry. He understood he was in a tricky spot. He couldn't just tell her to leave rudely, especially not on her birthday. But he also couldn't let her keep talking like this, hinting at things he didn't understand. He had to be very, very careful. It was like walking on eggshells. He needed to find a way to end this conversation, to open the door, and to make sure everything went back to being proper and professional. He looked at Sarah again, who was still watching him, a small smile playing on her lips. She seemed to be waiting for his next move. He knew he had to act, but every thought felt like a risk. He needed to be gentle but firm, kind but clear. This was not just about him, it was about protecting his job and making sure Sarah was safe in a doctor-patient way. The weight of his duty felt very heavy. Dr. Miller took a deep breath, pushing away his own worries for a moment. He knew he had to act like the doctor he was, calm and clear. He stepped away from the wall, trying to make his voice sound steady, even though his heart was still beating a little fast. "Sarah," he said, speaking a little more firmly this time, but still kindly. He made sure to look directly at her, making sure she heard him. "I do wish you a very happy 18th birthday." He gave a small, polite nod. "It's a very important day, and I hope you have a wonderful celebration." He paused, letting those words sink in. Then, he gently continued, making sure his tone was still soft but also very clear. "Now, your checkup is all finished. Everything looks good, just as we discussed." He gestured slightly towards the door, not pointing, but making his meaning clear. "It's time for you to go home now." He kept his face kind, but his eyes showed no room for argument. He wanted her to understand that this was not a question, but a gentle reminder of the rules. He was trying to be both a caring doctor and a clear professional. He hoped she would understand the unspoken message. The doctor's visit was over, and it was time for her to leave the exam room. He waited, holding his breath just a little, to see how she would react to his firm but soft words. The quiet in the room felt very big as he waited. Dr. Miller's words hung in the air, clear and firm, yet still kind. He watched Sarah closely, waiting for her reaction. For a moment, her bright, playful smile softened, and a hint of disappointment crossed her face, like a cloud passing over the sun. Her eyes, which had been so full of mischief, now seemed a little less sparkly. She didn't argue or try to talk over him this time. She just looked at him, then glanced at the closed door, then back at his face. It was clear that she understood his message. The fun was over. The doctor had set a boundary, a clear line that she couldn't cross. She probably knew he meant that it was time to leave, and that the special, secret moment she had tried to create was not going to continue. A small sigh escaped her lips, almost too soft to hear. She nodded slowly, a tiny, almost sad movement. Her shoulders slumped just a little. It was like a child who had been told playtime was over, even if she was now 18. The knowing smirk that had been there for so long finally faded, replaced by a more thoughtful, quiet expression. Dr. Miller felt a small wave of relief, mixed with a tiny bit of sadness for her disappointment. He didn't want to make her feel bad, but he knew he had to keep things proper. He just hoped she understood that his job came first. He watched as she slowly began to uncurl herself from her comfortable spot on the exam table, the sound of the paper crinkling softly again. The unusual tension in the room began to ease, replaced by the familiar quiet of a doctor's office at the end of a visit. The quiet understanding settled between them. Sarah, her moment of bold playfulness now past, slowly swung her legs off the exam table. The paper crinkled under her one last time before she stood on the floor. Her movements were not as slow and dreamy as when she first walked to the door, but they weren't rushed either. She simply moved with a quiet acceptance. She turned to face Dr. Miller, who still stood near the door. Her eyes met his for a brief moment, no longer mischievous, but holding a hint of something unsaid, a last quiet thought. Then, she lifted her hand, not for a handshake, but for a small, quick wave. It was a simple, friendly gesture, a final goodbye that felt a little different from her usual polite thank you. With that small wave, she turned and reached for the doorknob. This time, her hand didn't pull the door shut. Instead, she turned the handle and pushed the door open. The sound of the clinic hallway, with its faint voices and rustling papers, flowed back into the room. She stepped out, her back to Dr. Miller, and then the door clicked shut behind her, this time from the outside. Dr. Miller stood alone in the exam room, watching the door. The familiar quiet returned, but it was not the same quiet as before. It was a quiet that held the echo of Sarah's words, her smile, and her unexpected actions. He let out a long breath he hadn't realized he was holding. The visit was truly over now. The door clicked shut, leaving Dr. Miller alone in the exam room. The sudden quiet was heavy, filled with the strange events of the last few minutes. He remained standing for a moment, his gaze fixed on the closed door, as if Sarah might suddenly reappear. But the door stayed closed, a solid barrier between the unusual visit and the normal clinic sounds outside. He let out another long, slow breath, feeling the tension drain from his shoulders. His heart still felt a bit jumpy, but the immediate worry had passed. He walked slowly away from the door, his steps feeling heavier than before. He didn't go to his desk to call the next patient. Instead, he went straight to the small stool where he usually sat to talk to patients. He sank onto it, leaning his elbows on his knees, and put his face in his hands for a moment. He took another deep breath, trying to calm his thoughts. It had been such a normal day, a string of routine checkups. Then Sarah had turned it all upside down. Her actions, her words, that knowing smile, it all replayed in his mind like a strange little movie. He shook his head slowly. He had never had an end to a checkup quite like that one. It was certainly an experience he wouldn't forget quickly. He thought about Sarah, now 18, making her own choices. He hoped she would make good ones. He hoped his firm but kind words had been enough to gently guide her away from any path that might cause her trouble. He looked around the clean, quiet room. It seemed so ordinary now, but he knew it held a very unusual secret from this afternoon. He sighed, knowing that sometimes, even in a doctor's office, life could bring the most unexpected surprises.